Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and check out our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. And check out our Altar Sleeves. Support the show by using the code MagicMics at checkout for 5% off anything in the store, or go to AltarSleeves.com/MagicMics to check out our Altar Sleeves on the site. I am Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, MTG Nerd Girl.
Hey, guys.
Ruben Bressler.
Hi, good afternoon. How you feeling, Evan?
I'm tired.
Tired? Yeah.
Been up since 7 something this morning driving. It's been great.
Yeah, long day for you. Long drive.
Long drive, but worth it because we got to talk about Magic cards at the end of it.
That's right.
I'll take it. We also begin
like Magic cards.
Oh yeah. We also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week, or at least our last show, in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who is the most eloquent, letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 OG Theros block cards. Ruben?
There's a bunch of ways that you can get your comment in. You can comment on the YouTube, Patreon, the Reddit. You can message or comment on Facebook. There's a bunch of interesting ways that you can, or even in the Discord, we've had some winners from the Discord. This is our first Twitch winner because we are now streaming these live to subscribers.
Nice.
And the comment that I liked the best was a comment from someone who's actually in the chat right now, Sinvek, who wrote in the chat while we were talking about it, my favorite OG Theros block card wasn't that strong, but it enabled some amazing mechanics. Launch the Fleet was amazing in Theros.
Launch the Fleet was a journey into Nyx's rare. It is a 1-white mana sorcery that has Strive. Remember that mechanic?
Mm-hmm.
This spell costs 1 generic more to cast for each target beyond the first. Until end of turn, any number of target creatures gain, quote, whenever this creature attacks, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token that's tapped and attacking. A way to kind of, hoard up on your monstrous, fleet of dudes.
Yeah. It was really good with heroic, quite good in the aggressive white strategies, obviously. Mm-hmm. So it was a fun comment.
Nice. Well, now we know that we're watching everywhere, eyes everywhere. Twitch chat, Facebook, Reddit, threads, something.
That's right.
Email or mails to our PO box, which we don't have, but we could set one up. Don't mess with us. Congratulations to Senvac. Please contact us. Hey, on social media right here. Check it out for your prize. Thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this giveaway. And stay tuned for our top 10 list this week, and maybe you can win next week's free gift certificate, because it's time to talk about confusing, maybe cards that were a little weird. You didn't expect them. Kind of surprising, as it were, cards.
Yeah. The name of the game this week, not in Counter-Strike, but in Magic, is Complexity.
Oh.
Because this week is all about just confusing things that you like. Why does that creature have reach? Why does that spell interact this way? Why are there 85 words on this card? All those good stuff.
This could have been the top 10 cards that make you go,
Yeah.
Nice. Let's start with
I basically did my list on top 10 things I messed up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why don't you kick us off here, Nerd Girl, with number 10?
All right. So, like I said, all my cards are things that I have messed up or have some sort of silly story or had some interesting interaction with. So my number 10 is Serrated Scorpion. Ooh. This is a Ikoria card. It is a 1/2 for 1 black mana Scorpion. When Serrated Scorpion dies, it deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. So I played with this a little bit in limited, but it wasn't super limited playable. So the last time I did a co-op with CGB, we made a deck and then we played against someone who played the Scorpion. And I swear we had like a 5 or 10 minute argument whether we should attack into this Scorpion. I'm like, no, this is not good. Don't attack. And he's like, I don't understand why this is not good. And we just went back and forth like 10 minutes because the entire time I thought it had Death Touch. And it was
Yep.
And
wow.
It didn't end up until the next game did I realize.
Some classic new to Commander stuff right here.
Well, I mean, look at that art. That should have Death Touch. Like, it's a Scorpion. Scorpions should have Death Touch. Spiders have reach. If it's a spider, it has reach in Magic. That is what it has, right?
Yes.
This should have Death Touch. Look at that tail. You're telling me that tail is so stupid.
It's not the frog and the thing with Death Touch. It's the frog and the scorpion, right?
It's the frog and scorpion.
I feel like it had to have accidentally been left off the card at some point. Like, I know it's a good card for what it does in the thing, but like, yeah, I'm sure I would have lost the game to this because I would have just never attacked them.
Maybe in Ikoria, that was super underpowered, as we all know. That was just a bridge too far. Just couldn't put that one keyword on that Serrated Scorpion. All right. Ruben, what's number 10?
I also have a black card at my number 10. And I remember... So I sort of... I wouldn't say cheated, but I took two very complicated ideas and combined them because they exist on one card. Setting someone's life total to a number is very complicated and is confusing because you're setting the number. Are you gaining life? Are you losing life? Is it neither? Is it both? What's happening? And then taking someone's turn is complicated, right? So if I control someone else's turn, that also has a bunch of rulings. So instead of going with like Magister Sphinx for the setting the life total and Mind Slaver for the taking the turn, we just took the chocolate and the peanut butter of the complex nature and combined it in a card that has over 800 words in its notes and rules information, Soren Markov.
Oof.
Soren Markov is 3 generic black, originally from Zendikar. It's a legendary Planeswalker Soren that enters the battlefield with 4 loyalty. +2, Soren Markov deals 2 damage to any target and you gain 2 life. -3, target opponent's life total becomes 10. And -7, you control target player during that player's next turn. I mean, just the number of things that can go wrong if you don't have a judge nearby with Soren Markov is pretty hilarious.
You could gain control of yourself using Soren's third ability, but unless you do so to overwrite someone else's player controlling effect, this doesn't do anything, amongst other sundries of what this card does. Now, this card is so old at this point that, like, I remember talking to R&D and going, man, this is really close to a Johnny Vengeance. Remember Johnny Vengeance had a Lightning Helix type ability, and this is a Lightning Helix type ability? And we're like, that's red-white. This is mono-black. What's happening? And they're like, dude, there's going to have to be blends of different abilities on different Planeswalkers. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's fine. It's whatever. But it turns out that last one's the real weird one.
Yeah. My favorite one is you can't make the affected player concede. That one's my favorite.
Yeah. All right.
That is one of the weirder Planeswalkers, to be sure.
And to be one of the, the early ones too, right? Like just a whole bunch of words.
Like a 3rd generation Planeswalker.
Well, I'm coming at you with number 10. How do I say this? Okay, so I'm old at this point.
We know.
I'm an old man. I have children, and they're awesome. And so what that means is I was playing Magic back in the day. Now, back in the day, we didn't have all the basics that we wanted. Now, today, you got basics flying out everywhere. You got land stations, you got lands and everything, and lands and packs and bundles and all that crap. Back in the day, you got the stuff in your starter decks, and you picked up some lands here and there, and maybe you traded for some alphas and betas because that looks pretty cool back then, but whatever. So sometimes you would play a red deck and you would say, my forests are mountains, right? Or you would play a white deck and be like, my swamps are plains because I don't have any either, or they're my one white deck. Well, you know what? They said, let's just do that on a card. Let's just make a card like that. And it's called Naked Singularity from Ice Age. This card is awful. This card is the number 1. The hell does that thing? Why are we playing with this card? It's a 5 generic mana. It is a rare artifact worth a whole 57 cents, worth every penny. It has cumulative upkeep of 3 generic mana, so don't expect it to stick around long. But instead of their normal mana, plains produce red, islands produce green, swamps produce white, mountains produce blue, and forests produce black. It's trying to be like cute, and they're making the enemy colors on the thing, but you could argue the other enemy color could be the enemy color of the color. It's not good. It's a whole host of what's happening. Why does this do this now?
Yeah. This card's stupid. I've never seen this card cast.
It's just meant to just mess them up, right? You build around it, but then they get like messed up somehow. So it's interesting.
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, because like it doesn't affect like non-basic stuff, but like they're dual lands. You got them, and you're like, oh, okay, pay 3 cumulative upkeep now,
right?
Like,
if your deck is full of pathways, then and you play your Naked Singularity. We did it, I guess.
We got,
but like, Yeah, what is even the end game of this card, though? Like, I can't imagine the pitch meeting for this card going much further than, but it's cute, right? Yeah,
Right.
put it in a thing.
It's really neat. It's different.
People are
right?
gonna love opening these as they're rare.
And I did.
What you were saying about like my forests or swamps or whatever, I still do that when I play sealed pools. Sometimes we'll just buy 6 packs each and then we just open them, have no basics. And if I'm playing like a blue-black deck, then I'll just be like, all right, these white cards that are in my pool, these are my swamps or whatever.
Sure, you can still do that. That's cool.
Yeah.
But like, you don't make a rare.
Yep, that does that on purpose. Yeah,
Like, it's just terrible. Not to mention the Cuban Lucky with 3 generic mana. What is happening? You can't even like mess with people for a while. Like, we get what, 2 turns? Anyway, Number 9, Nerd Girl. What you got?
All right, so my number 9 is something. One of the things you do as a content creator is you try to do things that are a bit funky, things that you wouldn't typically do because you have a lot more time on your hands to play Magic than the average person. So alternate win conditions is a really fun thing that people like to do with content creators. Oftentimes my viewers will give me a bounty. Like if you kill someone X way, I will, donate money for crumble cookies or whatever.
Or 100 subs or whatever it is. Sure, great stuff.
Well, that's ambitious. That would be
all
nice.
right. 10 subs. Fine.
Yeah. There you
Awesome.
go. Or I have also had someone say that like every time you mill someone out in a format that's not meant for it, like in limited or something, I'll gift a sub. Great.
Nice.
So my number 9 is Happily Ever After. This is a 2 generic mana and a white for an enchantment that when it enters a battlefield, each player gains 5 life and draws a card. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 5 color permanents that you control on the board, that's one thing. There are 6 or more card types among permanents in play or in your graveyard. You have to have a greater or equal starting life totals, so you can't be below 20. Okay. There was one more thing. Anyway, that's the point of the card, is that I don't remember. So trying to hit this several times in the process, I'm like, I've got it. Play the card, boom, and then nothing happens. And I'm like, wait a minute. So yeah, trying to hit this was a lot of hoops to jump through, and I struggled to get all of my ducks in a row. It was a lot of things to fulfill in a lot of different ways, but it was really fun.
Yeah, this is like the perfect card to challenge yourself with,
Yeah.
Sure.
This is can you actually do it? This is also one of those weird things they were just like, we're giving white card draw. And we're like, dude, this is not giving white card draw. I don't know what you really think this is giving white card draw? This makes no sense. But okay. As an alternate win condition, though, I think it's great.
I wish when they did things like this, they would do bullet points. Like you have to fulfill the listed things, and then it's like bullet, bullet, bullet. And then I wouldn't get so lost, and it would be easier to like check them off.
I was gonna say I want check boxes. I want little tiny like check boxes on that. Be great. Ruben, what's your number 9?
So my number 9, I don't have a list of a lot of personal stories because a lot of the cards on my list are so complicated that I've never played them or played with them. But my number 9 is a card that I have gotten by and will continue to got by until I figure out how doubling and halving counters works. My number 9 is Voron Klex, Monstrous Raider. Voron Klex, Monstrous Raider is 4 colorless green legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor. It's a 6/6 with trample and haste. If you would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, put twice that many of each of those kinds of counters on that permanent or player instead. If an opponent would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, they put half that many count of each of those counters on that permanent or player instead, rounded down. Turns out Elspeth Conquers Death can't kill this card, and I know that because I've tried like a dozen times, and every single time it doesn't work. Same with Binding of the Old Gods.
I guess it was binding every time.
The first time I played against the Emergent Ultimatum deck, I was like, I'm not going to give them an extra turn. Here's, Tybalt and Voron Klex. And then they just ultimated Tybalt immediately. And I was like, oh, that's how that card works. Interesting. About once a week in Brawl or Historic Brawl, I will just get got by a Voron Klex and be like, what am I supposed to do against this? I don't understand.
Makes the math really weird. I mean, like, you both sort of get it and both go like, I thought I was going to at least get like one, right? I was going to get like the first trigger and then it just wasn't going to give me any more. But no, it doesn't let any of them at all. And this makes sagas suck. And damn, that's a really good 6-mana, 6/6 trample haste guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Sagas are the worst for sure.
It just screws them over so hard. My number 9. My number 9 here is a card that, man, it's a lot, and it's so much that when Wizards tried to kind of fix the templating, the Oracle wording of this has 107 words. It's not a double-faced card. This is a singular individual card from Ice Age. We're still in the Ice Age world. Let me tell you, I grew up with this. This was my world. I opened these in packs, and I was like, I'm sorry. Did you, what are you saying? Little card called Dance of the Dead. It is let me read you the printed card. This is fun, and then we'll keep going. It's a black and generic mana for a uncommon enchant dead creature. You take target creature from any graveyard and put it directly into play under your control, tapped with +1/+1. Treat that creature as though it were just summoned. That creature does not untap during its controller's untap phase. At the end of his or her upkeep, its controller may pay an additional black and generic mana to untap it. If Dance of the Dead is removed, bury the creature in its owner's graveyard. Kind of get it, kind of, sort of. And then it went through the Oracle grader, and it's an enchantment aura to enchant creature in a graveyard. When it enters the battlefield, if it's on the battlefield, it loses enchant creature in a graveyard and gains enchant creature, put it on the battlefield with Dance of the Dead. Barf, barf. Yeah. That's a lot of words to just like, it's just like a bad reanimate dead that needs a black and generic mana upkeep, but it does give it +1/+1.
Yeah, I mean, animate dead is not much better.
Not much, but it's a lot.
Because it's an idea that makes sense in flavor, right? In story, it's like, oh, this is a spell that is enchanting a corpse, and I'm bringing it back to be animated. And if the enchantment goes away, then the creature also dies. That makes sense from a story perspective. But when you try to say it in magic words, it doesn't translate well to magic words. And so you look at like the Graveborn Animate Dead, and it's 78 words or whatever. Dance of the Dead is also needlessly complicated because Ice Age, right? Just adds more steps to having the same thing.
Basic gameplay. And also,
I do think that trying to make an idea for a card work, like you were saying, like even like the upkeep part of it, right? Where it's like you have to keep the spell or whatever going, and it doesn't translate well. Like definitely it adds a ton of complicated bits for seemingly no reason. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's when I was like, I get it, but like, it's just so much. And yeah, just one of those like super wordy for no good reasons. Gameplay doesn't make up for it, and I don't like it. Yeah. Let's move on here to number 8. Ruben, what's number 8?
My number 8 is a card I have cast before. I think exactly once, because as soon as I cast it and we tried to figure out how it would function in a multiplayer game, it was we just didn't do it anymore. My number 8 is Shared Fate. It's a 4 colorless and a blue enchantment from Mirrodin. If a player would draw a card, that player exiles the top card of one of their opponent's libraries face down instead. Each player may look at cards they exiled with Shared Fate and may play lands and cast spells from among those cards. It's like trying to swap your libraries and allow you to draw cards from your opponent's libraries and your opponents draw cards from your library. And it's just needlessly complicated and stupid. And this is stupid.
Yeah, this is a really,
Which set was this from?
This is from Mirrodin.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like at a certain point, they're just like, okay, we need to come up with something new. And then like they come up with these really funky things. We went through this like weird period where they did a bunch of this and they're just like, okay, this is just awkward. Nobody's really having a ton of fun with this. Let's just throw more words onto cards instead. And that's the phase we're in now. But yeah, this is a weird one. It's probably kind of silly for EDH.
Yeah.
I can definitely, the Hackburn mentions that Shared Fate's art might be Matt Cavada and his wife. I could definitely see or understand that.
Nice.
Yeah, this is just like, man, they went through a weird period there where it was just like, let's just make something weird.
Yeah.
And that's more or less what we're going through this week. So, Nerd Girl, what's your number 8? My number 8 is a 4 colorless and a blue enchantment from Mirrodin. If a player would draw a card, that player exiles the top card of one of their opponent's libraries face down instead. Each player may look at cards they exiled with Shared Fate and may play lands and cast spells from among those cards. It's like
So my number 8 is what I consider one of the highlights of this thing that my brain does, especially as a limited focus player. I will read a card. I will read it again. I will play it 50 times. And in my head, and it never does this other thing because it's not relevant to limited gameplay. However, then you get into a situation where a viewer submits a deck list or something, or playing constructed, and this card now does something drastically different than I think it does. And that card is the Eldest Reborn.
Ooh.
Okay, so it's 4 mana, 4 colorless, and a black for a saga. The first chapter is each opponent sacrifices a creature or a planeswalker. Second one is each opponent discards a card, and the third one is put target creature or planeswalker from a graveyard into the battlefield under your control. I swear I've played this 100 times, read this 100 times, and it never said sacrifice a planeswalker before. Someone added it after the fact. Mm-hmm. And so I'm playing constructed, and my opponent just taps out and slams it to fairy, and I'm like, oh, I guess I lose. I untap and just like basically do nothing. And my chat's like, why don't you just kill the Teferi? And I'm like, this kill spell does not say planeswalker. They're like, no, but the saga does. And I'm just like, oh, God.
Oh.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, it's a wonderful spell that is very, very powerful. And also just, helped define how cool Dominaria was. Like, this is where Saga showed up. It was incredible. Eldest Reborn telling the whole story. And it can sneak in Planeswalker in there. Just,
As a limited player, I swear cards don't do the same thing they do in constructed. And then once you get this like cemented idea of what a card does in your head, it like...
Yeah. It gets weird. And then
let me tell you, it is brutal to lose a Planeswalker in limited to this card. It is the worst. Yeah.
I was going to say, most of the time they play Planeswalker and you're either conceded immediately or you have some way to get rid of it that next turn.
Right.
Either or, otherwise it just takes over the game. It's ridiculous. So, for my number 8, this was, when they made the first unset, they went really far. Rosewater went as far as he could into weird and strange and stuff he couldn't talk about, stuff he couldn't reference and whatnot. And this was probably the easiest one to go when you first read, you go, I'm sorry, excuse me? Can you tell me what this does one more time? And I think you could argue it's meant to be that way because it's called ambiguity. Ambiguity is 2 blue and 2 generic mana for an enchantment. Here we go. Whenever a player plays a spell that counters a spell that has been played, or a player plays a spell that comes into play with counters, that player may counter the next spell played or put an additional counter on a permanent that has already been played but not countered.
Amazing. I love it. It's perfect for an unset.
I'm sorry. What? Excuse me?
Yeah.
So it's countered, or the spells are countered, and then you put a counter on the thing that's not countered.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. It's perfect. I have no notes. 10 out
perfect
of 10.
in every
Send
way.
it to print.
They did it.
Yeah. At least that card was supposed to be confusing. That one gets to be on the list, but it knows what it's about. It understood the assignment, right? If you get cards that you're just like the doubles and halves and becomes a thing and then flips and then turns over, I don't need all that in my actual set.
Yeah. Here you go. Ruben, what's your number 7?
Like this card. We got more rares from Mirrodin, everybody.
Oh,
this
great.
one's named Time Sifter. This is a 5 mana artifact. At the beginning of each upkeep, each player exiles the top card of their library. The player who exiled the card with the highest mana value takes an extra turn after this one. If 2 or more players are tied for the highest, the tied players repeat this process until the tie is broken. So this just stops turns from going in order. You just clash to see who takes turns from now on.
Oh. Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, that's a painful way to play Magic. To be sure.
This seems really uncomfortable. Like, people don't want to be friends with people who play Time Sifter. Like, what are you doing? Why are you like this?
I feel like that's one of the things about like EDH for me is like you can tell who you want to be friends with based on their EDH deck, right? Like the types of cards you're playing determines how I view you as a person.
Yeah, it's like the one
This
who
is gonna
shows
be
up
one
with
of those
Golos
cards.
and like is all maxed out with dual
Right.
lands and expensive everything versus like hey, I bought a precon and like put 4 cards in it.
Yeah, or
Those
like
people.
the take your turn type mechanics and to control your stuff, and that's yeah.
Oh, your commander's Baral, huh? Hadn't seen that before.
Fun.
Thanks. All right, let's move on here to Nerd Girls number 7. What you got?
So I mostly picked newer cards, and I hit on a little bit of everything of things that I've been got by or that will trip up people. And this next card for me is an example of a lot of text. And I swear when you read them, like at a certain point you just kind of stop reading because you assume you know what it does or something. And that is Orcus, Prince of Undeath. This is an X2 black and a red for a 5/3 flying trampling demon.
Label.
When it enters the battlefield, choose one. Option 1, each other creature gets neg X until end of turn. You lose X life, or return up to X target creature cards with total mana X or less from the graveyard. They gain haste until end of turn. I definitely cast this and immediately killed myself by making negative X too much, because my just auto skimmed past that last little chunk and cost myself a match because of it. And it just does a crap ton of things, and it's hard to keep track of them all.
See, Meat Hook Massacre just gives you all the upside. Like Meat Hook Massacre, you can't sort of accidentally your entire life total like this guy. He's just like, oh, you get bonus. Oh, all that stuff dies. You gain life too. Let's do it. Let's party. And Orcus is like, no, you will experience pain.
Yeah.
You will.
Well, if you want a 5/3 flying demon, you're going to have to,
kill
pay
yourself.
a little bit. You're going to have to kill yourself a little bit.
Wow. Well, that guy is scary and that guy is weird. And my number 7 has often been eroded like by just the people who play it. And I guess these days, like it's become, my God, the beta versions worth $5,000 just hurts my soul. But I do know it's very simple. Back in the day when Magic first came out, there was no such thing as a collectible card game. There was no such thing as, collecting X copies or something. So all the rules were just kind of from like stuff they'd seen in board games. And at the time, certainly board games were starting to get into the, what do you call it? The, when you use your hands, when you flip things.
Tactile.
Tactile, thank you. Tactile and or maybe something else. But either way, they're using tactile tactics where they're like, look, these are physical actions that you're going to do with the card, with Chaos Orb, where it says, look, for 2 generic mana, it is a mono artifact, heyo, which means you can play it once. One generic mana tap, : if it's on the battlefield, you flip it onto the battlefield from a height of at least 1 foot. If it turns over completely at least once during the flip, destroy all non-token permanents it touches, then destroy. Chaos Orb. Along with the famous tear it up into little pieces and drop it all over the table was a thing. And it just, to me, like every cube owner I knew, it's 2 mana to play and 1 mana to destroy target non-land or destroy target permanent. Just kill
ours, it didn't even target. It said choose.
Ooh, that's
in
fair.
Our cube, because
Okay.
you can drop it onto a hexproof thing.
Nice. I didn't think about that.
The best Chaos Orb I've ever seen was, there was a guy who collected all of the oversized cards. And I was doing an event in Providence for SCG, and it was in one of the decks. So you had this comic book sized Chaos Orb to try to flip from above the table onto, giant Sarah Angels or whatever. It was great.
And must flip at least turn over once. Yeah.
Casual Magic, you have the confetti one. We used to have little, I had a slip of paper that was exactly the same size as Magic card in my deck box, and we would play it, and then we'd rip that up and toss it around. Just because, we're kids and it was fun. But
yeah, the word I was looking for earlier was dexterity. Dexterity mechanics are the ones that have you flipping and rolling and tossing and doing all sorts of stuff. And, that wasn't so, weird back in 93 or whatever, but it certainly is today. All right, let's move here to number 6. Nerd Girl, what's number 6?
So my number 6 is not a card that I found. The text itself is not confusing. Again, I wanted to pick a little something that made Magic somewhat difficult, and I found this card to be very difficult to play and to play against because it makes you do a ton of extra mental gymnastics when you know this card is in your format. I mean, at least in Standard. And that is Massacre Girl. This is a 3-mana black for a legendary human assassin that is a 4/4 with Menace. When Massacre Girl enters the battlefield, each other creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Whenever a creature dies this turn, each creature other than Massacre Girl gets another +1 or -1/-1. So it kind of stacks, right? So one of the things you find yourself doing when this is a thing you're playing around is making sure that like your creatures don't add up well. You don't have an X1, an X2, an X3, or if you have 2 X1s, you can't have an X3 because they'll get it, right? So you have to have 2 X1s and an X4, and you just have all these like extra mental gymnastics where you decide you might have to play this one thing instead of something you normally would just to make the numbers line up appropriately. And that makes Magic so much more complicated.
Yeah, it also has a delayed trigger. Like you can play this, then attack, and then if something dies in combat, the delayed trigger happens. So Massacre Girl is very complicated.
Yeah, whenever a creature dies this turn, any creature, token or non, doesn't matter. Each other creature happens, and this is one of those cards that if War of the Spark hadn't been unbelievably overpowered and they hadn't been just in like a super juiced format, I think this would have been sort of the all-stars, like, you know, sort of the Black Wrath of God of the format. It was in the format and it was good, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like, you know, it didn't define Standard. It was just really good in Standard based on what people were playing.
And that's part of the thing, too, that made it so much harder to play around because you're right. It wasn't just like dominating the format, but it was something you had to be very conscious of all of the time. It was there just enough to really freak you out.
Yep.
Just no. And I still play with this thing in Brawl. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
People run smack into it. Ruben, what's number 6?
All right. We are getting to cards. I mean, we've already been going. My whole list is cards that just have words for no reason. Like every card on my list is just like, why are you like this? Why are we here? Eye of the Storm exists and is a very complicated Magic card. Basically, every card on my list is like things that you don't want to flip over if you're playing the Judge stack at a tournament. Eye of the Storm is 5 colorless blue for an enchantment rare from Ravnica. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery card, exile it. Then that player copies each instant or sorcery card exiled with Eye of the Storm. For each copy, the player may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So it just, you know, you get your first copy kind of, and then everything stacks forever.
Yeah, and it was weird, like, because your opponent kind of got the first chance, sort of first crack at it, but at the same time, you got to untap at that point, and if they had used it, you know, in some way, then you got all of their stuff if you had, like, an opt or something, or whatever. Right. Yeah, this is a card that kind of gets out of hand really quickly and just spirals into madness, essentially, and it's kind of scary. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of cards like that where you can play the thing and then draw a card, give it to somebody else. Like we see those sometimes on smaller mechanics where it's like it does a thing for you and a thing for them. And then when you use it kind of matters. They might just decide to keep it, not take the bonus so you don't get it back. It's definitely an interesting mechanic. So
for my number 6, now this is a $250 reserve list card for no good reason other than it's old and it's hard to find, blah, blah, blah. We spoke earlier about alternate win conditions, but there may be, and feel free to correct me if I am incorrect, but there is exactly one card that has an alternate draw condition, and that's Divine Intervention. You have your 7 mana enchantment. I'll take you to 8, 2 white, 6 generic mana for a rare enchantment that says, when it enters the battlefield, you put 2 intervention counters on it. I'm reading you the Oracle to save yourself here. At the beginning of your upkeep, you remove an intervention counter from it, and when you remove the last one, the game is a draw.
Okay.
Why do you want to play?
Who wants a draw?
For a draw?
Who builds their deck with a draw in mind?
Who was ready to pull down the draw action? Like, what? Why? Why are you like this?
Yeah, that's a weird one. I don't like that card. That card's stupid. That card shouldn't exist.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, who was asking for this draw? Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on. That's all I got. It's so strange. Ruben, what's number 5?
So my number 5 is one of the more complicated abilities that we've seen in recent memory, which is Mutate. And I knew I wanted to have a Mutate creature just because I think Mutate is very complicated. And I was looking through the list of Mutate creatures, and then I came across this creature that I've had a lot of questions about, which is Nethroi, the Apex of Death. Nethroi, Apex of Death is 2 colorless, white, black, green, for a legendary creature, a cat nightmare beast, 5/5, Death Touch lifelink. It also has Mutate of 4 colorless, and then a Selesnya, which is either a green or a white, and then black. Whenever this creature mutates, return any number of target creature cards with total power 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, Mutate's already super complicated. Mutate says, if you cast this spell for its mutate cost, put it over or under target non-human creature you own. They mutate into the creature on top, plus all abilities from under it. Okay, yeah. So you sort of are like stacking and mutating, right? Then it's got this other thing of total power 10 or less, which allows you to select creatures with, for example, 0 power, like Clone or Pelucranos. And those don't count against your total number. But other things like Death Shadow can't be targeted because in the graveyard it's a 13/13, right? So, and then you've got creatures that have Star for power and toughness. And you've got, it's just needless. It's just an insanely complicated card.
Yeah, you're adding this already complicated ability that we've never seen before that is very unique, and then adding this weird thing that has a lot of questions, then, giving that an ability that has a lot of questions, like you were saying, stars or whatever. Is it when it enters the battlefield? What about, if it enters with counters, does that count? That is adding complicated to complicated is very interesting.
I did throw this sort of out there at one point. I was like, is Mutate the most complex mechanic ever created? And, granted, it's not as bad as some blah, blah, blah banding. But what I'm saying is when you read Mutate, that's a hell of an ability to just like try to explain. It almost feels like, if you just given somebody, from 5 years ago, this card and said, here's this card, figure it out. I'm not sure they'd have come up with the exact way Mutate works without being a little explained as to how Mutate works, because it's a lot.
And that doesn't even include like the flicker effects, like what happens if you flicker a creature that's been mutated, right? They actually all come back into play separately, whereas like you could interpret it like, okay, maybe the one that is on top comes back, the other one falls off like an enchantment. Like there is a lot of ways that you can interpret some of the Mutate mechanics, and it is a doozy for newer players for sure.
Yeah, it is a lot here. So let me get this on the list officially. Nerd Girl, what's number 5?
So my number 5 is kind of a simpler one, but it is a card I have cast a lot and messed up a lot. I don't play a ton of Constructed, so each time I come back to it and do various lists typically submitted by viewers, this is just something I forget every time, and I don't know why I can't remember it. And that is Elspeth Conquers Death. It is 3 mana white for a enchantment saga. The first one, when it enters the battlefield, chapter 1, exile target permanent with that an opponent controls with converted mana cost 3 or less. Chapter 2, non-creature spells your opponents cast cost 2 more until the end of your next turn. And chapter 3, return target creature or planeswalker from your graveyard to the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on it, or a loyalty counter on it. So no matter how many times I see this card or cast it, I will always forget the clause, an opponent controls with converted mana cost 3 or greater. Because in no way in my brain do I cast 5 mana to not kill something worse.
Right.
To kill something smaller or suckier or whatever. So like I will just cast this and hit nothing forever. This is not something that will stick in my brain, and I don't know why, but I've been got like over a dozen times, for sure.
It took me a minute not to think of this as like an Oblivion Ring, that if they disenchant the Elspeth Conquers Death, they get their thing back, Right. Like there for a minute, I felt it was working that way. I'm like, oh no, like if they have a removal spell, I'm screwed. But no, it just exiles it forever.
There's a bunch of complicated crap happening with Elspeth Conquers Death for sure. Not the least of which is, if I want to hit my opponent's 11/11 flyer, too bad. It's a Hydroid Crisis. I want to hit my opponent's really impactful, Meat Hook Massacre. Oh well, can't do that. Very stupid. Then the second ability always gets my opponents. I love the second ability because they'll be like, all right, I can maneuver around this thing. And then on their upkeep or on my upkeep, they can't cast spells anymore. And it's great. And then the last ability, you get an extra loyalty counter, which is just a huge swing for a ton of planeswalkers, or you just get a free creature, which is also a huge swing. So there's a bunch of complicated stuff happening with Elspeth Conquers Death.
Yeah, I mean, back when you could play the 3-mana Teferi with Elspeth Conquers, it was just sick and amazing and ridiculous. And before I move on here to my number 5, thanks much to the Hackbird for noting that a Prophecy rare also draws the game. Who knew? Great. Of all the sets. Celestial Convergence, because you need to know about this piece of garbage card. It's almost $3 because they haven't reprinted it because no one wants this card at all. 2 white, 2 generic mana for a rare enchantment that enters the battlefield with 7 omen counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, you remove an omen counter from it. If there are no omen counters on it, the player with the highest life total wins the game. If 2 or more players are tied, the game is a draw. Whee!
Hooray.
It's a prophecy crap enchantment. Who knew?
At least that one says that someone wins the game.
Someone can win the game.
Most of the time.
Yeah. Except, when they don't.
Except for when they don't.
All right. So for my number 5, this is a card that, it just often gets thrown around as this, silly thing. Why don't you just put this card into an online client for the lols? And it's there are so many laws to be had, and there are so many questions to be raised that when you cast Shahrazad, do you really want to try to answer them in any form or fashion? Shahrazad originally came from Arabian Nights, now almost $550 as a part of the reserve list as of this recording, at least. It's 2 white mana for a sorcery, and I'll just give you the short Oracle version. Players play a Magic subgame using their libraries as their decks, and each player who doesn't win the subgame loses half their life, rounded up. Boy, you thought that would be an interesting thing to say, except it took them about 70 words back in 1993.
Yeah.
Yeah, we figured it out.
Well, it took them a long time to say, creature, effects that would prevent loss of life can't do this, and a bunch of stuff on cards back in the day. But yeah, Shahrazad it's a flavorful card, right? You're telling another story within another story, and that's why you're playing a game within a game. There's of course the epic moment during the Loading Ready Run pre-release for Unstable when Wedge had Spike Tournament Grinder and wished for a copy of Shahrazad. Which is a great sentence if you have any idea what words I'm saying are. But yeah, Shahrazad is just ridiculously complicated. Basically, if you're ever playing against Shahrazad, say resolves, I can see the sub game and lose half my life rounded up.
It's 2 white mana, you lose half your life. Good job. Yeah, this is a card that has the sentence, or at least part of the sentence, the sub game has no ante. So
great.
That is a good one. Yeah.
That's a good reminder. I mean, you don't want to play Shahrazad and then play another Shahrazad in the sub game.
Right. And then you get Jeweled Bird all over the place. And you're like, oh my God, if it wasn't for the Jeweled Bird.
I've got a stack of 85 cards in my ante now. Getting decked out by ante. Nobody likes that.
Yeah. Ante is one of those things that when you just try to explain it to somebody, they're like, the blood drains. And they're like, you mean they're going to just take my cards for free? And you're like, just like that, just for playing Magic. That's what you get. Let's move here to number 4. Ruben, what's your number 4?
So my number 4, most of my list, I wanted to make sure that most of my list at least had the new border, right? Because I can excuse some early Magic foibles. You know what I mean? They didn't really know what they were doing. They didn't know how to walk yet. So I understand that. But I remember this being a thing when Judgment was out, because this is just such a funny story that I had to put it on the list. My number 4 is called Book Burning.
Oh, yes.
Book Burning is a colorless and a red sorcery. Now, its current Oracle text says, any player may have Book Burning deal 6 damage to them. If no one does, target player mills 6 cards. Easy peasy, right? Except that the way that Book Burning was written And all of those Punisher mechanic cards, but specifically book burning because of where the line breaks occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Book burning on the card, the first line says, unless a player has book burning, deal 6 damage to him or her, put the top 6 cards of target player's library into his or her graveyard. A way to read that people did read was, unless a player has book burning,
and
pause, deal 6 damage to him or her, comma, put the top 6 cards of target player's library into their graveyard. So you would play against people, and this is an Old West story of like, so do you have a copy of book burning on your person? If not, you mill 6 and take 6 damage. That's a thing.
It was the greatest thing ever until people realized that that's not how
that's not how Magic works.
Yeah, that's not how it works at all.
So I definitely played this card. I had one of the first decks I built and bought cards for as a kid was a mill deck that was 3 colors. I don't know why, but it was blue, black, and red, and I was running Blazing Spectre, Brook Burnings, and Browbeats for the red side of it.
Nice.
So yeah, this card was an interesting one, and young me thought it was really cool.
That's a good one.
I mean, the Punisher mechanic is a wonderful teaching tool for you to recognize that the Punisher mechanic is actual trash, and you should never play with any punishing cards, no matter what they are and in what form they took. And yeah, this is a really cool way to kind of see what old school templating could do to a card, which is they misinterpreted it entirely, and people took 6 and milled 6 for no good reason, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, and also it sounds like that Blazing Spectre, Browbeat, and Book Burning deck is really good for the Fat Guy Bees cube, which is a thing that I've been keeping a list of for a long time.
What?
Yeah, keep them bees.
You never heard of the Fat Guy Bees?
Nope.
I have not.
You first pick a Bitter Blossom and you go to town.
They put a book burner.
Is it just a cube with bee words?
Yeah, every card that has 2 bees costs a colorless less, and you have to say every bee like this.
What about Blazing
Spectre? Costs the same amount, probably.
Blazing, yep.
Blazing.
Not enough bees. Need more bees.
More bees.
There's only one.
Nerd Girl, what's your number 4?
So my number 4, this is a somewhat new mechanic that we've only really seen once that, it's not a complicated thing to get, which most of my cards are, but no matter how many times I play against them, I always forget that they exist. And that is when they added those static abilities to those pesky planeswalkers. I will forget them forever. So I just kind of picked an honorary one, probably the one I've messed up the most, and that would be Narset.
Yeah.
I was about to say it's Marset for me.
Partner of Veils. So this planeswalker I've definitely not drawn many cards from when I thought I would. This is a colorless blue for a 5 loyalty planeswalker, and the static ability is each opponent cannot draw more than 1 card each turn. So any draw abilities, any cycling, anything is all gone. And then it itself offers some really good card advantage with its -2 ability. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put that into your hand. Put the rest onto the bottom of your library in a random order. So it provides a lot of really good card advantage while also punishing your opponent and extra punishing them because they will then immediately forget and cast their spells anyway. So yeah, this is a punishing mechanic that I am still paying for to this day.
Yeah.
Today's Make You Sick fact is the Japanese alternate art foil is $775.
Woof.
Woof.
Yeah.
This card, this was one of those cards they said, we really wanted to make an impact in older formats. It's like, well, you did it. You got there. It was all over Vintage and I think Legacy, at least for some amount of time.
Oh, yeah.
Brainstorm just says, put 2 cards back, and draw nothing, which is also incredible. Or if it was on their turn, you draw 1.
Right.
And then put back 2.
Yeah. I definitely ran into this. I've definitely run into Ashiok Dream Render not allowing me to shuffle. I've definitely run into Tibalt not letting me gain
yourself?
life. Yeah. Stone Rain myself, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
These are the fact that they just printed an entire set of stacks pieces. Every Planeswalker was another stacks piece. So all of those games of Limited just ultimately ended up like stalemates. That was a tough format.
it was like that format was OP. I mean, it was just like Proliferate was in there. Yeah. Like some of the best removal of all time. Ob Nixilis's Cruelty is like one of the best removal spells ever printed ever. These, like, I loved the idea of making uncommon planeswalkers and they don't have pluses. I think that's brilliant. Proliferate lets you kind of build more counters on them without making that really apparent. I thought that was super cool, but my God, the power level of these things was
like playing a cube.
It was very similar.
I actually liked it in Limited, and I really liked the fact that this was the first time I felt like I could see a Planeswalker and not just want to throw up on the table.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you play a Planeswalker? Okay, like, I'm just going to get it with my little thing, or like it redraws itself, or it does something like kind of minor that wasn't game-breaking.
Yeah, they didn't like just really in the game. Yeah, like Angrath made a 2/2. You're like, oh God, you know?
Right.
Like, I can deal with that. That's fine. Thank you. You know, it's not a soul-crushing experience every time.
I liked that.
Yeah, that was fun.
I did like the limited environment. It was also way different than anything we've had before or since.
Yep.
I think it's nice to think of, particularly at this point, sort of the master sets and honestly get into the Modern Horizon stuff, which is they're building miniature cubes as sets. And you get to draft them as a cube in a set of, you know, where the power level is super high and the impact is super huge and the cards are super good and they're at the highest, you know, power level they can be and yada yada. And that feels cool. That's not like there's anything wrong with that. That's why cubes exist, was to give you those experiences. And now, like, the sets are pumped higher and higher, that it starts to feel that way. You're like, oh, this is it's cube-esque because it's so powerful. All right, let's move on here to my number 4. Has officially been apologized for, has officially been described as bad card design. Lord God, there is no card that when I came back from Magic, I left Magic around Tempest, Stronghold. I came back into Magic around Mirrodin and whatnot. And this was the card where they're like, you ain't going to believe this one. And I'm like, yeah, all right, whatever. And they're like, okay, fine. Destroy 2 target non-black creatures unless either one is a color, the other isn't.
Right.
And I'm like, what? What's the word? What to say? Excuse me? And it's meant like it's a multicolor set, but it's meant to like hate on monocolor, but it's not, because it's a multicolor set. So a lot of things are multicolor. So it's weird that way. Deadringers is a black and 4 generic mana for a common from Apocalypse. It's a sorcery that says, once again, destroy 2 target non-black creatures unless either one is a color, the other isn't. They can't be regenerated. Now, if you sit there and you draw it out and you put lines and you make little things, you can figure out what's going on here, but it's in no way clear. It's one of the most obfuscated way to explain this ability ever, and it just blows my mind every time.
Yeah, a common. Like, if you're a rare, okay, like, I get it, Shared Fate, you know, Time Sifter, whatever. You have this in like multiple copies of this in every draft. Like, this is way too ridiculous.
It's just hard to explain.
Basically, it now that I know what it does, it's like, okay, that creature is green and green only. That creature is green and green only. I can kill them both, right? Yeah. That creature's colorless. That creature's colorless. I can kill them both. Yeah. But if one of them is blue and then one of them is blue-red, I can't kill them both. Okay, how do we put that into words? Well, apparently this is how you put that into words. And it's not great. This is not a great way to put that into words, because this is the most complicated wording.
Oof.
This is the card that kind of spurred us to make this top 10.
Yeah, this is like the card that I read and I was just like, this is the silliest thing ever. Yeah. How about we talk about these silly, ridiculous cards? Unless either one is a blank, the other blank. Stop it. What are you doing? What is happening on this card? You need to quit. Stop it. Get some help.
A Mad Libs / like Cards Against Humanity situation where it's like trying to piece together various things that kind of fit, but like, do they?
Yeah.
It's a lot. All right. Moving here to number 3. Ruben, what's your number 3?
My number 3 has a long and illustrious history of being confusing, messing up board states, being famous for being obfuscated and not necessarily complex, but needlessly annoyingly just in the gray areas. And I think that I will specifically ask that we use the From the Vault Realms version of Dryad Arbor.
Ooh.
Dryad Arbor is a 1/1 with no casting cost. It's a land creature, forest dryad.
Oh.
And the from the Vault Realms version has the big forest symbol that you put on basic lands and looks like a forest, and famously has been like stacked in lands before, so that when I like swing all out and you go, haha, I've got a Dryad Arbor chump block. Yeah, this card's stupid. Dryad Arbor also is why Green Sun Zenith is banned in Modern, because it's just like 4 more Llanowar Elves that can also be 4 more Primeval Titans. So it means that I don't get to play my cool Zenith. There's a number of things wrong with Dryad Arbor, and this is one.
I mean, if I recall correctly, and it's been a minute, but if I recall correctly, back in the day, there was some judge ruling that was like, if you try to do that Dryad Arbor under your forest crap, oops, I have a blocker, they would call you out on that as, some sort of violation or gameplay violation, because I don't know, what's the violation for being a scumbag? Like, I don't know.
And yet, I believe, I don't remember when this happened, but it definitely happened at Worlds, I think, or some other high level event.
I'm sure somebody can help us.
That would not surprise me. Some sort of variation of just like ankle shooting, trying to.
It's like cheaty face, right? It's like, it's like, oh, you didn't notice? It's a forest, blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, I guess, you weirdo. Like, why do we have to play Magic like this? Like, doing stuff like that, that's the exact type of stuff that the actual pros, the actual best in the world will never, ever do, because they don't need to. They don't need to gotcha that hard. They'll get you in different ways, but like this whole, I kept a 1/1 under my forest to, so Nassif wouldn't notice it. Like, get out of here. That's not how they play.
That was who got, wasn't it?
I don't recall exactly, but
I think you're right.
It could be. Nerd Girl, what's your number 3?
So my number 3, there's actually nothing all that complicated or weird about it, but my number 2 and my number 3 are the ones that I have been got by or just misread. Because, like, do you ever have a card that is so stinking good that it can't possibly say the things that it says on it? So your brain just fills in the middle of what you think it should say. So that's my number 3, and that is Pack Rat. For 1 colorless and a black, you get a star rat creature. Pack Rat's power and toughness are equal to the number of rats you control. For 3 mana, you can discard a card, put a copy of this, a token copy of this onto the battlefield. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm getting an XX rat every time I discard a card. That's cute. I opened this in a pre-release and decided not to play it because I didn't want to like discard a card, have them answer this, and I just end up with this like rat. It didn't seem like strong enough for me to be in black. However, I didn't realize that the copy also has the ability. So like even if it's dealt with the original thing, you can still keep doing this. And it's absolutely insane. It's one of the biggest bombs in the format. And I didn't play it.
It ran standard for about 1.5 years.
Yeah, and like you could literally just play a land deck in limited and kill somebody with this thing. And I didn't play it in my sealed pool, and I had 2 other friends look at my pool, also agreed I shouldn't play it because none of us read it the way we thought it would. We thought it was like the new ooze that makes the Tarmogoyf, right? Like there's just blank text on that one, but it still has the star. And then insult to injury, I went to a PTQ like the next week knowing what this does, and I opened a double Pack Rat pool and had to pass it. Ooh. So like this card is just the worst thing ever, and I got by my own ability to read.
That's double oofs.
I mean, you're not the only one who didn't really understand the power of Pack Rat. I mean, if you think about Pro Tour Theros, there were 2 Pack Rats in the mono black deck that made top 8. Yeah. So, it took a while for Pack Rat and the mono black devotion deck to kind of catch on.
Yes, this is like the best thing to do after Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize, anything that can deal with my Pack Rat. Yeah. Pack Rat. That was the format for at least a year. Solid year.
It is crazy that the token version also has the ability, because you could at least, reasonably Hero's Downfall something. But now you can't even do that.
Oh, no.
In limited, there's very few cards in the format that are better than discarding to this. Like, it just makes your entire deck better.
Yeah, I can't. This might be the first and or the only that I can think of, at least. But, the precedent at the time when this thing was released was that Wizards would not make a token version of this because the token version has the power and the token version has the mana cost, as well as sort of, everything else on it. And so they didn't want to put like token creature rat with everything else around it the exact same because they feel it would be very confusing or people would.
Then they should have also just not printed this card the way they printed it.
I mean, for what it's worth, that's a good argument. I would just say, I get it, but like I would still have liked a token creature rat. I think it would be pretty cool. 4-pack rat.
Yeah.
All right. So for my number 3, I've got the heavy hitters. It's okay. I'll take that realm. I'll take that role. This is a card that is so weird. This is a card that is so strange. This card is so hard to understand that they made it work differently throughout the years. They made it work kind of as they printed it, and then they made it work in a different way, and they made it like put a thing as officially entering the battlefield. And then eventually they're like, you know what? Now the original idea was you're supposed to be like super sneaky and tricky with Illusionary Mask, and instead it's like, the hell does this card say? All right, so it is from Alpha, y'all. This made all the way through Unlimited, at which point it's part of the reserve list, and it's worth $400 or whatever because reasons. Now, the limited edition Alpha version, I'm not gonna bother with the card decks. It's a bunch of silliness. But what you can say is, for X generic mana, you may choose a creature card in your hand whose mana cost could be paid by some amount of or all of the amount you spent on X generic mana. That's the first sentence. And if you do, you may cast that card face down as a 2/2 creature spell without paying its mana cost. It's morph before morph was cool. If the creature that spell becomes as it resolves has not been turned face up and would assign or deal damage, be dealt damage, or become tapped. Instead, it's turned face up and assigns or deals damage, is dealt damage, or becomes tapped. Activate only as a sorcery. I hate every word of that. Yeah. What it means is your Phyrexian Juggernaut can flip over and not make you sacrifice 12 power worth creatures. That's what it means.
That's basically what it means. This is another one of those cards that's lost in translation, right?
Lord.
Like, it's your creature is pretending to be something else because it's wearing a mask.
Right.
And that's cool. Like, that is flavorfully cool. Does not translate into English words. Does not, the text, the current Oracle text
doesn't
makes me go cross-eyed. Like, I can't.
The original card...
That is a lot of text.
Yeah, the original card doesn't mention the 2/2, by the way. The original card does not explain there's power and toughness to that card face down. Mm-hmm. That was added later. That was created from whole cloth.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Illusionary Mask is a lot of words and a lot of complication for no good reason, most of the time. Let's move on here to number 2. Speaking of no good, complication for good reasons, I'm going to go ahead and bust out my number 2. This is a fun one. This is a classic one. This is the one that starts with every single difficult judge question. You know what I'm about to say. Yeah. It's humility. Humility is at its core very, very simple. 2 white, 2 generic mana for a rare enchantment from Tempest. That's part of the reserve list, so it's $70 because screw you, that's why. But Humility is 4 mana for a rare enchantment that says all creatures lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 1/1. And you would think that's really easy and clear. And then you have crusade effects, and then you have power and toughness alternate effects, and then you have counters on top of that, and then you have other modifiers that are on other enchantments. Did those enchantments come out first, before, or after Humility? That can matter. There's like 7 layers of applying effects, and Humility can affect them all in strange different ways depending on exactly what setup you happen to have. And if you're doing weird stuff like making them into artifacts or something, when Magic gets super weird, Humility is right in the middle going, let's make it weirder. Let's make it real strange.
Yeah. The interaction between Humility, Opalescence, and Worship was a traditional judge question where you would shuffle the 3 cards up and say, this one came into play first, this one came into play second, this one came into play third. What is what? Mm-hmm. Right? Because things are applied in like layer 4B or whatever. Mm-hmm. And this was on the judge. Maybe it wasn't even on the judge test, but this was just like what judges did in their spare time, was figure out how Humility interacted.
I was on like a judge study thing when I first started playing a ton of Magic. I had no desire to be a judge. So like I took like the practice tests and studied with them, and they had like a group chat text where they would post like questions like to test each other, not like things that had come up, but like, hey guys, I've got a cool judge weird thing. Try to figure this out. And that was definitely one that did come up a bunch. And it is an interesting one for sure.
I can't remember what they called it. I'm sure they had some really cool moniker for it. There's some sort of like Magic and Judge mode or Magic, Judge version or whatever. The point was that you had to use every single thing. You had to do every single thing you could at every phase of your turn. So like if you could tap something, you had to tap it. If you had to draw something, you had to draw
the Judge Tower. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Judge Tower thing, which is every single trigger you had to make sure happened and occurred, and you pointed it out and all this stuff. And again, this is where these types of cards show up. Yeah. Ruben, what's number 2?
My number 2 is another of those cards that if you see it in your Judge Tower or your Type 4 stack or whatever it is the format is, maybe just to say, I don't know how Knowledge Pool works. Oof. I just don't know how Knowledge Pool works.
Nope.
I don't want to try to figure out how it works. And I'm done thinking. Knowledge Pool is a 6 generic mana artifact. It's a rare with the Mirrodin watermark from Mirrodin Besieged with imprint. When Knowledge Pool enters the battlefield, each player exiles the top 3 cards of their library. Whenever a player casts a spell from their hand, that player exiles it. If the player does, they may cast a spell from among other cards exiled with Knowledge Pool without paying its mana cost. So it's, you're putting your spell into the pool and then pulling something else out of the pool and hoping that the claw machine gives you something nice, right? It's just very complicated, and if you have spells that can only be cast during like specific phases of the game, you can suddenly not cast those. There's a bunch of weird stuff.
Also, maybe you can put like a bunch of expensive spells in there and then save them and then just like cast like an opt and then like yoink out some more expensive things. It seems like they want to do this really cool thing that you can kind of manipulate your mana and how you use them on various turns, or maybe exile in another way. I don't even know. But then you end up with like, again, more overly complicated rules that just like don't seem to make it better.
Yeah, I mean, I get the magical Christmas land of, putting 3 9-mana spells or whatever out there and you play them on 1-mana cantrips or something. But because they made it random, it's just random. Yeah. And so, like, I guess it's fine. I don't know. This card's weird. The only thing I appreciate is the fact that they got rid of the fact that it says you may cast another non-land card exiled with it versus saying cast a spell.
Yeah.
Because if it's a land, it's not a spell. So they have to say non-land. So that's a nice little Oracle update, but I don't expect them to reprint this anytime soon. So, yeah. Moving on. Nerd Girl, what's number 2?
All right, guys. So this is another one of the ones where, again, it's not necessarily the card's fault. My list was made based on me. But have you guys ever been got by the art of a card? Not even the text. The art on a card gets you and makes you make awful misplays. For me, that card is Felidar Sovereign. It is a 4-mana, 4 colorless white for a 4/6 vigilance lifelink. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 40 or more life, you win the game. I was at a GP. I was 8-0 in day 1. Proceeded to just lose to this thing to go 8-1. I was up a game. I had lethal on board. And all I had to do was just swing 2 times into this thing. They couldn't have gained enough life to stop me. But because I thought it had flying and vigilance, I assumed they would be able to attack me and I wouldn't be able to block on the way back, and they would outgain life, right? Gain 4, gain 4, gain 4. Can't beat it. I just proceeded to lose my match because I thought this thing could fly.
Yeah.
It looks like it's like perched on a mountain. It looks like it's some sort of griffin.
Yeah.
Yeah, or at least reach, right? Something kind of go up there and grab the flyer.
So my friends are just watching me throw away a match to this thing. They're like, why doesn't she just attack? And I didn't for my 9-0.
If you've hung around, particularly tournament Magic, or you've seen your buddies, play tournament Magic, it will just like your soul will envelop itself as you watch something like that happen, because you can't say anything about it. But you're like, They don't understand that it doesn't have flying. And you just have, like, I have to walk away. Like, I can't.
I don't even think they knew why.
Right.
At the time. They were just like, what is going on?
I mean, there are so many cards I could have put on my list of, like, why does that have reach? Is, like, basically this card of the set of why does that have reach. I think Master Symmetrist is the most recent one, where I was just like, that card doesn't have reach. Like, why does that card have reach? I don't understand what's going on.
There's
Robber of the
tree
Rich.
folk.
Yeah. Robber of the Rich is another one that has.
Why does Robber of the Rich has freaking?
Because it's an archer. Because it's Robin Hood, and for no other reason. It's got haste and reach. Very upsetting. So yeah, creatures that look like they should do something and then don't do something are stupid.
All right. Well, let's move on here to our number one. Ruben, what's your number one?
I share my number one with Nerd Girl, and. Yeah, if you want to talk about cards that look like... I mean, so, everything about this card is confusing. I
don't know if it's confusing.
It's perplexing.
Yes.
It is, why is it named generically if it's a legendary creature? Why does it have this suite of keywords in this manner? Mm-hmm. Why does damage prevention kind of happen? It's just, there's a lot happening. On Questing Beast.
Yeah.
Yes. So our shared card is a 2 colorless green for a 4/4 legendary beast with vigilance, death touch, and haste. Questing Beast can't be blocked by creatures power 2 or less. Combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. Pretty key for historic and things. Mm-hmm. And whenever Questing Beast deals combat damage to an opponent, deal that much damage to target Planeswalker that player controls as well. So it has this like weird spaghetti situation where I feel like they just chucked a bunch of stuff at a wall and saw what would fit in the text box and just kept whatever stuck. To this day, like I've played this a ton of times in Limited and in Constructed a ton. It was in every green deck. And I tend to love green decks. So to this day, I can't remember them all. Mm-hmm. Like if you ask me to recite what this does, I will always miss a thing. I will like flip a thing and it doesn't have this one, but it has this other keyword that I just flipped.
This card has like, this is like a new generation of Magic players Cryptic Command. You're like, name me everything Cryptic Command does. Right. And they'll always get some part of it wrong or they'll forget part of it or whatever the wording is. This is just like, and the last part, it does a what? We're going to redirect damage to Planeswalkers? Excuse me? Like, that part always got me. Like, every time.
That damage isn't combat damage. So, and also, if a creature has protection from green... That don't matter against Questing Beast because the damage can't be prevented.
Unbelievable.
And then it's called Questing
Beast instead of
the Questing Beast. There's a bunch of... I mean, I know where the name comes from or why it's called Questing Beast, but it should really be called the Questing Beast.
It should, like, and they they admitted that was a mistake. I think the problem was not admitting the rest of it was mostly a mistake because why did you just keep throwing things on this card? We get that you wanted it to be good. It's good. It didn't need at least one of those things it does, and we still would have been happy with it. Like, it's fine.
I get the 3 main keywords because it's got 3 heads.
Yeah.
So like, okay, it attacks you, but one head, it's got vigilance because it's still looking at you, whatever. Like, it's cute, but why do we need all the other things? And they have a lot of words.
Yeah, well, you know, my number one is, it's a classic. I mean, we'll know it's a classic. I'm going to try to make you understand that every time a player draws a card, that player must first discard a card from their hand. Yeah. If there's no cards in that player's hand, take the top card from library and place it in the graveyard instead of drawing. This enchantment is not applied to the first card drawn by a player during the draw phase. There's only one Magic card that I know that has a nice, clear flow chart, and that's Chains of Mephistopheles. And I just read you the Legends version. So let's think if we can, let's try the Oracle version, which might be a little bit more clear. This is a black and generic mana for an enchantment. It's on the reserve list. It's $1,500 because reasons. If a player would draw a card, except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, we ain't talking about Sylvan Library here. You get that right out. You just go home. Take that Sylvan Library home. Now, okay. In each of the draw steps, that player discards a card. Instead, if the player discards a card this way, they draw a card. If the player doesn't discard a card this way, they mill a card. I'm still kind of sort of confused as what exactly is happening.
It's a lot. It's very complicated. And I have seen this card in play I believe in Legacy, might be in Vintage. But it is a nightmare, even more so in practice than in theory.
Yeah.
It is horrendously bad.
This isn't, I mean, they put this on Magic Online. How did they do that? That's just impressive. Now, note, in real life, $1,500 on Magic Online, about 35 cents. So,
well,
interesting.
About
I love the number comparison. I appreciate them.
Mm-hmm.
Little bitty amount, $1,500.
Right. I also, in case this wasn't bad enough, you can play multiples of these, and the effects do stack.
So
if you thought one Chains of Mephistopheles was bad,
you take your $6,000 worth of cards and you go home.
Yeah,
you go home.
It's gross.
Right. There are some cards that I feel like you're never really going to see the deck that you could be built around them because it would cost $6,000 plus to get a play set of these things.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you're never going to buy them and hope it's good and run out the 6K. No, we're just not going to do that.
Yeah. The deck that has 4 Chains of Mephistopheles, thankfully, will never be at the top of the Legacy metagame.
Thank God. Okay, well, that was our top 10 confusing cards. You'll see them on the screen right now. If you review, take a look at my list, Nerd Girl's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Nerd Girl.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Ruben.
I'm excited to see what ridiculous, complicated garbage Magic comes out with next.
Let's do it. All right. We were to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsors, CardHoarder.com and AlterSleeves.com, my co-host, MTG Nerd Girl, and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at Magic Mikes, on Twitter at Magic Mikes Cast, our Magic Mikes subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Well, join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.